I love what I do.
Yeah.
I wake up every morning going, who am I going to meet today?
Yeah.
What are we going to talk about today? You know, I am so excited every day. I'm very proud of the fact that I'm known for being trustworthy and honest. I don't think that you can truly really help people unless you're honest with them. There is something about the intimacy of a real estate transaction.
Yeah.
People want to know and have someone in their corner that is helping them.
Okay, so here we are, Rate of Success podcast, new episode, Shanon Tully with Platinum Partners Realtor, and I'm going to introduce her in 1 second, but you know, Shanon is special because she is going to be the first realtor that we have in the new studio, okay? My wife was the first guest, so that was an obvious choice. Shanon is our next guest with the new studio, so we're excited you're here.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Love
so
it.
why don't you tell me a little bit about where you are now and how long you've been in the business?
Okay. Would it be all right if I start
Yes.
with what has my professional life been like?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I actually began in the healthcare world.
Wow.
I went to nursing school and got a master's degree in nursing from Rush. And then I started working downtown at Northwestern Memorial. I worked there for many, many years in all kinds of different capacities. Then when I had children, I needed to stay home with them. And I wanted to. I wanted to be home with my kids. But at some point, I realized I really need to get back to work. I missed working, and I really get a lot of satisfaction out of working. So I had to decide, what am I going to do next? Because nursing was probably not going to work out at that time. I was off for quite a few years. The reason that I began working in real estate is really out of a very negative experience I had with a real estate agent. We're not going to talk names or where, when, or anything like that. But through that experience, my overall perspective that came out of that experience was people really deserve better treatment than this. And I said to myself, I can do this better. And so I did. And I started that whole path about doing the training. And ever since, I've been an agent now for 11 years. I'm at Platinum Partners. Recently started a team called the Tully team. And through that experience, ever since I began, I've always had the consumer, the client in mind. What do they need to know? We need to help them make the best decisions they can. And I really found that there was a very big lack of education regarding real estate, the buying, selling process, and many more things, strategy, all those types of things that go into it. And so ever since I started, my focus has always been on education. Sometimes that's received really well. And sometimes it isn't, depending on who you're working with. But that's been the focus of my real estate career.
That's great.
Far.
So we always say, like, getting in this business, like, nobody plans to be in real estate. Like, we all kind of end up here in somewhat a mistake. Like, it's not like we go to college and we say we're going to be a realtor. You're going to be a lender.
Most people don't. Some do, but most people don't.
Yeah, maybe now because it's more in the forefront with TV shows and things like that. But, you know, we don't plan to be here. But obviously being in nursing, you know, is obviously very different than being in real estate. But do you lean on things that you learned in nursing a lot? Like, because everything you just talked about, there's a lot of parallels there, and I'm just wondering how much that lines up to what you do today. Yeah,
that is a very astute observation, and that's very true. I even say in my bio, certain bios that I have out there online, that the communication skills that I learned when I was a nurse, how you break bad news to people, how you guide people through really hard decisions, things like that. I really learned that working as a nurse. And I was surprised by this too, how easily some of those skills that I learned working as a nurse transitioned beautifully over into what I do now.
That's awesome, because I feel like some of the best realtors that I work with, you know, their background kind of set them up for real estate. Like what they did prior set them up for what they do now. And it's not, you know, it may be a completely different industry, but there's also, you know, real estate is such a dynamic industry and there's so many different areas of it. Like everyone thinks, you show homes or you write a contract, but it's so much more than that. A lot of it is communication, transparency, being able to give bad news, and the emotions of it is so overwhelming for some people. What I always say is like the worst comes out in people in a real estate transaction.
I think that's true.
You can have like the best transaction, but someone can have just a really, because it's overwhelming. You only buy a home, what, 4, 5, 7 times in your entire lifetime.
Probably.
So it's stressful. So how have you, over the years, so you got in 2000, what was that?
2014.
2014. So that was a interesting time because we were just after 2008. Okay, so 2010, the market's just starting to recover. So how much was that helpful learning the business during that time versus if you would have learned it like some people have in 2021 or 2022?
That's another great question. That was a very challenging time, and that's actually when I had my home on the market. So I had to deal with that personally, that where do I find a buyer for my home and how much negotiating power do I have? So I've seen that component of the market where the market is just so depressed. And then I've also seen the highs of the market with the low interest rate and the low interest rates driving buyers to the market because they don't want to miss out on those, let's face it, once in a lifetime rates, right?
Yeah.
Those rates are not coming back. So I've been fortunate to see the extreme opposite ends of the marketplace. I find that very helpful.
Yeah.
It allows me to share those experiences with clients so that I can bring people back into reality and, bring them back off the edge of the cliff, that things maybe aren't so bad as you think. So I've found it very helpful.
Yeah, because I always tell a story. I was in a real estate office for years, and I remember during that time, and people just can't even fathom this, but people would get a listing and they would almost not even want to take it because you'd have it on the market for 12 to 14 months.
Right.
And you'd be spending money, and then if it expired after 12 months and you didn't sell the house, all the money you spent and all the time with open houses and things were wasted. And when you say that to people nowadays, like they can't even fathom, like, what do you mean you wouldn't want a listing? It's like, it was such a unique time.
I know.
So I always feel like those experience, and when you work with a buyer, I think, again, it's so much more than just writing the contract and things like that. It's those experiences that you've been with, all those transactions that you've done over the years, they help people, navigate the current market. And that experience that you have is what they hire you for. And I think that's really important. So what do you feel like, as you've gone through, and so have you always been at Platinum Partners, or kind of what was the journey along the way?
No, I've been at Platinum Partners. It's been the longest place that I've been, but I have been at another brokerage too. Platinum Partners, the location of it for me personally can't be beat. I've lived in Downers Grove my whole life. And so I wanted a brokerage that was centered right here. Downers Grove is where I love to do my business. I know the most about it. And as we were talking earlier, my husband was the mayor for 8 years. He's been on the village council for, almost 2 decades now. And, a lot of people would ask me, why does your husband do that? He just likes to give back. My husband I really think my husband is a brilliant man, and he gives freely, basically, all that knowledge to the village for their benefit. So I think that's very admirable for him to do that. But with his experience working in the village, I have a lot of knowledge about how the village runs, more so than your just average person. And so, you know about village council meetings, you know about FOIA requests, when people are looking for permits, how do you do that? All that information helps me to better serve my clients, and so I find that very valuable for them too.
So I've lived my whole life in Downers Grove as well.
Right, you went to the South,
I
right?
went to South.
So did I.
Yeah, so the transformation at Downers Grove over the last several years is amazing. And you experiencing that, and obviously for a while, Platinum Partners was almost like the only, a real estate company for a little bit there. That's what it was. Right? It was the first one.
Platinum Partners started in 2004. And it started with 5 agents that worked at different companies. For one reason or another, they were dissatisfied with their current situation. They knew each other. They all came together. And similar to my story,
Yeah.
they said, we can do this better.
Yeah.
And so they started their own company in 2004 with 5 agents.
Amazing.
And now they've grown to well over 100 agents. I'm not sure the exact number where we're at. We might be around 120, something like that. But we've certainly broadened our horizon all across Chicagoland. Of course, we're centered here. We love to work here. But we go all over Chicagoland.
Yeah.
And
would you still consider Platinum Partners like a boutique?
I would, yes.
Yeah.
Well, and only because, if you want to transfer from one location to another, it's not like you're going to go to California and find a Platinum Partners there. So we are a boutique, but, as we know, when a property goes into the multiple listing, it goes worldwide, right?
Yeah.
So I really personally don't think it matters if you're part of a boutique brokerage or a national brokerage. As long as you have the right agent,
absolutely,
you can get done what you need to get
done.
done.
I think it's amazing. I just love the idea of the boutique brokerage still surviving, doing well, thriving, and being a staple in a downtown area, because it just doesn't happen in a lot of industries. So to see it in our industry is really important. And it's a big part of our business.
Right. Yeah. Did you know that Platinum Partners is the only brokerage in Downers Grove to achieved over $1 billion in sales?
Amazing. You guys need to market that more, because I did not know that.
Well, it's all over my listing presentation.
Is it good? Okay, I love it. But we got to get that out there. I love that. That's a big deal. Yeah.
It is. It's a huge deal. And so we're competing directly with all the national chains. But the relationship that you have with your agent is really a personal one.
Yeah.
You don't have the relationship so much with the brokerage. The relationship is one-on-one with your agent. But of course, I always think it's very important to have that support behind the scenes so that everything runs smoothly. And if, you're missing something, they catch it, and so that everything runs smoothly. It just helps the transaction from beginning to end go more smoothly.
Absolutely. So, so you get into business in 2014. Okay. So you come from nursing, so you have an idea getting into business. It's a unique time. What were kind of the pillars of your business? I know with customer experience, like how did you start building that, and what were the tough lessons that you learned kind of very quickly in the beginning? Because I think we all, when we get in this business, we have a perception of what it is. Yeah. And then we realize really quick it's not, Yeah.
When I started in the business, we were talking about education, how the education in real estate is so much better than it was. When I started in the business, there was no education. And I'm talking about like going to YouTube or finding other sources for education about real estate. School teaches you about real estate, but it doesn't teach you how to run a business. Yeah. And it doesn't teach you how to get clients, right? So you have to sort of learn all that on your own. There's a lot of information available now to help you do that, but back then there wasn't. So I made a lot of mistakes. Some of the things, some of the things that I thought were important to share, maybe not so much, and vice versa. So it was a lot of trial by error, but really it was the people who knew me, liked me, and trusted me. We always hear that, know, like, and trust. And people will, seek out your services. But it was really people through my volunteer associations, things like that, and family, friends that were my first clients. And then, I've been lucky that they've referred me to other people. And so my business has just continued to grow. And my social media has definitely helped. I think that would, of course, I'd love to have that be a bigger part of my business, but I'm always working on that. So.
Well, I love that you mentioned social media, because that's something that I told you when you sat down that I definitely like. I love the amount of work that you've done on it.
Thank you.
I think I see a lot of people do social media and it doesn't really kind of make sense. I love your social media because it's, the quality is good. It's not overproduced. It's not like it seems almost like a boutique, like it has your brand built into it in your own way. And I don't know if you think about it that way, but that's why from the outside looking in, that's what I see. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make in our industry is like, we always think like we're just going to get a ton of business from it. Like I always say, like, we never know what we're going to get out of it. Like you're staying top of mind with a lot of people that you probably don't even realize that consume your content, never hit the like button, never reach out, but yet when they need something, they reach out. But we never connect the dots back to them seeing you consistently. So I think what I always tell is like, we need to stay top of mind as much as possible. And I see family members, I'll see a past client and I'll run into them somewhere and they'll be like, God, Eric, like you're everywhere. I see you everywhere.
You are everywhere.
And I'm like, that's exactly the response that I want.
Yes.
Like, not annoying, but just that you don't forget me. And I think that is what's really important right now is visibility, because we have so much competition for visibility right now. I mean, not everyone wants to watch real estate videos on social media.
No, they don't.
But I think so. How has your social media kind of evolved over the years? And you don't seem like one that's overthinking it too much, which I think is half the battle for a lot of realtors.
Sure.
So how did you kind of get into that, and where did that all kind of start and kind of progress?
I never had social media accounts before I started in real estate.
Yeah.
And obviously, you're thinking people need to learn who you are. So that's something that you just need to do. It allows people to get to know you better, not only professionally, but also personally. What kind of person are you? Are you a person that I want to work with, So when I started my social media endeavors, I would do the typical things like, you're coming soon, just listed. And that's good because it's social proof that you are working. And I think that's perfectly fine. A lot of people will think, oh, that's so passé, don't do that anymore. I disagree. I think it's okay to do that. But to me, as I mentioned a minute ago, to me, it's really about providing education to people. And if I can do that in a sort of a fun social media way, then I do that. I think it's good, and I think it's easier to digest that way for the people who are consuming it. But something that I always try to do is look to real life situations. There's something new in real estate all the time. No matter how long you've been working, something is going to come up in a transaction that you haven't dealt with before. And how do you handle it? I'm always looking for those kinds of clues to bring me around to, this should be your next post.
Yeah.
This should be what you write your next blog on. And so I use that as a clue
to
where I
So I love
should go.
that because one of the things, it's very similar, so we've never discussed this, but I love that you brought this up, because one of the things that I do for content is any question that my team gets throughout the week, we write those down. And I just use that for my content. It's that simple.
That's perfect.
I mean, like,
Right?
think about it. Like, we answer questions all day long. Like, I always see people will come to me. They're like, Eric, I don't know what to say. And I always be like, well, what are your clients asking you?
Right.
And then it's that simple. That's all it is.
Right.
And I have a webinar tomorrow, and one of the things that she talks a lot about, and I've been thinking a lot about, is, do you want to be seen or do you want to be found? And really the basis of that is that we could do a TikTok right now or a video dancing and we could get 1,000 views, okay?
Let's do it.
But we're going to get no business from it.
I know.
Okay? And being found is, you talk about that question, and then when someone goes on Reddit or they go to ChatGPT and they ask a question and you have a video that you posted on YouTube of that, you're now going to be referenced to that answer. So that's the difference of being seen and being found. And I love how you're progressing into that, because I think that's the secret of where we're going, which I think a lot of people will get wrong. And I think a lot of your content touches on some of that. And what I always say, it tells the story. So you've mentioned education a lot, which I love. Where do you feel like, obviously the biggest thing that's lacking in the industry right now, is education. Like, we're all posting just listed, just sold. You have average first-time homebuyer age is 40. We have 68% less inventory today than we did in 2019. We have all-time low in sales. Like, do you feel like that's the gap that's missing, where people are just struggling or they don't trust the industry? Where is that education lacking in the home buying process that's really needed to get people off the fence?
That is a really good question. Right now, I've got, let's bring it back to maybe last year. I had a buyer call me up. I think they found me online somewhere. I'm not sure the exact source, but they found me online, and she wanted to buy a home. And as I'm talking through the market with her and asking her about her suitability to buy, she's telling me she has a down payment. She's got a good job. She has steady income. She's got stellar credit. And I was like, great. When do we begin?
Yeah.
And she was like, you know what? I'm going to think about it and I'll get back to you. So she gets back to me in a day or so. She goes, you know what? I've been talking with people and I really think that the market's just going to crash, that the prices are going to go way down, and so I'm going to wait. Well, that was last year. So I followed up with her. I follow up with her, every few months, and I followed up with her this year, and I said, the market didn't crash, did it? But how much has equity gone up since then?
Yeah.
And not in a way that is helpful. I want her to realize that, unless there is some huge situation that happens in the world, given the state of the inventory that you just mentioned, prices are not going to crash. They might level off a bit, but they're not going to crash. And so how much equity are you going to lose out on as you wait?
Yeah.
And so that's part of the education. Home sellers on the other side, home sellers still think that their home is worth what it was 3 years ago, that they're going to get a buyer just like that, or that they don't have to maintain their homes anymore. And that just isn't true. That has been a challenge, trying to get a seller to be realistic about their price. I always try to show the data. Yeah. Show the data. It's right here in front of you. And sometimes, even though you have that evidence, personally, they just can't accept it for whatever
invested in
reason. Or maybe they're just living back in those days and they're like, oh, my neighbor sold their house last year in a week. Whatever the case may be, everybody's different and their situations are different. But getting people into what is happening today, I'm finding that challenging.
So on the education side, do you feel like on the listing side as well, like the struggle is, I'd love to sell, but then where am I going to move and what am I going to buy? And I will just end up staying here because it's going to be too hard. Almost out of fear of not having, because when we could sell and buy and you could do those transactions, and we've done those for years where it was like easy to line up and you would make it work and there was homes hitting the market. We just don't have that situation today. So it's how you handle that conversation where you have a seller that would sell, but there's just nothing for them to buy in the place that they want to buy. Is that
right?
I mean, because I just talked to a listing agent. I was at a broker tour before this, and she said she has 4 listings. Because I was joking. I was like, do you have any listings? Like, we need listings. And she's like, I got 4, but they won't list because we don't have anything to buy.
And I've got clients like that too. You are so right. It's like you have ESP. I was just thinking about this morning, about what it was like when I first started in the business, when I had somebody who wanted to sell and buy. I could easily sell their home and then start looking.
Well,
and I could
putting
always
a contingent offer wasn't like, it was expected.
It was normal.
Yeah.
And I could always find them something. Now there is fear out there that they can't find it. And that fear is justified. Even when somebody doesn't have something to sell and I'm trying to find them something to buy, we can find the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms, the overall square footage, but it's not the right style. It may not be in the right location. It doesn't have everything that they want. And so they don't, pull the trigger on that because they want what they want. So for me, what I'm trying to do regarding that situation is I'm giving them choices. You can sell first and buy later.
Yeah.
If you sell first, great. You can put in a reverse contingency if you want to do that, but that's not advantageous for you either. Any of those contingencies aren't helpful for the buyer or the seller. They're always going to be a problem. So sell first and maybe rent, or sell first and maybe do a long-term Airbnb kind of thing until you can find what you want to do. And that's always tough for people
because the moment you say you got to move twice, they instantly get.
It's
a tough sell.
It's a tough sell, but it's an option, right?
1,000%. I mean, I always feel like we have products for all that, like bridge loans and buy before you sell. It's like we have all these products, but I never feel like it addresses the main concern, like of. they just haven't when people fall in love with a new home, none of the other stuff matters. Like they'll make it work. Right. It's like, right. I'll talk to a buyer and they'll be like, we're going to take our time and we're not in a rush. And then they go out to the first house, they fall in love, and it's like everything is, we're buying
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And it's like, I haven't seen a lot of that where it's like, you have some, but I just haven't seen people where they have this home because normally when that home comes up, there's 10 offers on the table, and they're so wrapped up in the multiple offer piece. They're so stressed out about that they never really get into the emotions of just buying a house and putting in an offer. And it's psychologically, it's difficult.
It is. It's very, very hard. And you're absolutely right. When somebody finds the home that they fall in love with, they make it work. They do whatever it takes to make it work. I think that that's probably understandable. There's a lot at risk, right? But I always go to, what is your goal? What is your ultimate goal? I had a client recently that said to me, let's put my place on the market, and we're going to do our best to get it prepped, because you probably know me, preparation is a big part of why I think my clients are successful in their sales. But
can we talk about that a little bit though? Like,
sure.
How is your process? Let's say in a listing, we'll start there.
Okay.
How has that changed over the years, especially because you talk about education.
Right.
And obviously the way you did things previous markets, you didn't have to do as much, when homes were, sitting in the market, you had some time. But now it's like, you got to prepare. You could get an offer, 12 hours after you, list the house. So how has that preparation up front changed over the years?
Okay. It hasn't changed for me.
I love it. Okay.
It hasn't changed for me, because remember why I got into the business.
Yeah.
I said, I can do this better.
Yeah.
So I remember looking at listings where you could see what people were making for dinner that night in the pot on the stove.
Yeah.
And I could tell that they weren't wearing that outfit to work the next day because it was in a piled up hump on their bed because they hadn't done their laundry, right?
Yeah.
That is not acceptable. To me, whenever you're listing a property, so I've always conducted my business this way. I always advise my clients to prep their properties for sale, because even if your property is going to sell, and price dictates that primarily. You can, if you price your house low enough, it's going to sell, right? But that is not what your fiduciary duty is to your clients. Your fiduciary duty is to get the most eyes on their listing, to get the best and most qualified buyers, and to get as many buyers and offers as you can. That is what your fiduciary duty is to your clients. So if you just throw any old pictures up on the MLS, to me, I think that's a violation of your duty to your client. Maybe not technically, but personally for me it is. So I've always followed the same process. And I'll just share now because it seems the right time to do it. I have a dedicated stager and redesigner person on my team.
Okay.
Her name is Cindy Zeski. She's a long-term friend of mine, and we met actually through a real estate transaction. And she will go, I offer this free to my clients. Every listing client gets the opportunity to have a staging and redesign consultation with her. And I always want to save my clients money. I don't want them to spend a nickel more than they have to get their home sold. So she comes in and she will evaluate their entire home from curb to curb. And she'll provide a list. These are the things that I think you should do to position your home in the marketplace to the best that it can be. It needs to be the shiniest product on the shelf, right? And hopefully then you'll get more views, more showings, and more offers, which should bring you more money. So I've always conducted my business that way.
I love that you said this, because I had a conversation with a realtor a few months ago regarding this. Because if there's one thing that's happened over the last several years is, when homes were flying off the market, some realtors, not all, got away from some of the things that they would do. Why film a video? The house is going to sell. It's extra money I got to spend. It's going to sell anyways.
Right.
Why do that? I don't need to do that, because it's like, but, something you said about how your process hasn't changed, I can appreciate, because, I'm a process, I probably drive my team nuts with things that I make them do, but it's what drives. I feel like that's your brand. Like your process is what your brand. It's why people hire you. When we had all the commission lawsuit, craziness, like this is why people hire you, is because you have this. They're hiring you for your process,
right?
Not to sell their home. I feel like that your process is your experience and all the things you've learned. And I always joke, like whenever something negative happened, we just added another piece to the process to prevent that from happening again. And that experience means a lot. So I guess, where I'm going with this is like, how do you feel like, why do you still do all the same things, even if you feel like you got a hot listing it's going to sell? Like, what's the value of why you still do that? I think I know the answer, but like, is it just to get the most eyes on it as possible?
Yes. I mean, definitely you want the most eyes on it. And the way that you do that for video is a huge component of my business. I will do a video for every property. I do video for land as well.
Yeah.
It allows you to put different sorts of creative assets in place so that you can spread it along different channels, right? I have a YouTube channel. I have social media channels. I'm on LinkedIn. I have leads groups that I belong to where I can put things in. I collaborate with other people to get blog posts put on their sites as well. It's all part of just getting as many people to see what you're selling as possible. But there's also a segment of expectation, right? I think that, and reasonably so, the nicer home that you have, if you have, a $1 million home, I think they're going to have expectations about where that property and how it's going to be marketed. And really, I think that expectation should be at any price point on the line. You might have to set your budget a little bit differently for it, but I think that's something that I try to treat all my listings exactly the same. Video, drone video, community assets, community amenities that you want to showcase, floor plans, all of these things I think only help your client sell. You may not, when you net the money that you get paid, you may not net as much, but in the long run, I think it's well worth the business, for your brand, to improve and to be known for that.
No, I think it's awesome. I think the great thing about YouTube is, when you print a flyer back in the day, like, once the home's sold, you were done with it. That your catalog per se is kind of lives forever in YouTube. Like you have that there all the time, which I think some people lose sight of how valuable it is to have that and to see, because again, that's your brand. So, on the one thing you mentioned during that I was curious about is, and I don't know if you have an opinion, and we didn't discuss this, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but you mentioned about getting the most eyes on as possible. And there's all this talk right now about, different brokerages with private listing network and, where to me, I'll just tell you like where I stand on it. Like to me, I think the only one that loses out in all of that is the consumer. Because the consumer goes online, they should be able to see every listing. And if they're not, they're already struggling to find listings, okay? And now we're going to you got to go to this website and you got to register here. To me, it's controlling the leads instead of doing what's best for the consumer.
I completely agree.
Okay. I was just curious, because you had mentioned my job is to get most eyes
on the listing.
Yeah. And
I completely agree. I don't know. I haven't had this presentation in front of me personally. We all know sort of who we're talking about here. But I haven't seen or heard exactly how they convince sellers to do that. I would love to know because I just don't see any benefit to it. Put your listing on the open market where everyone can see it, unless there's a personal reason why a seller wouldn't want to do that. And they may have that. They may want it to be a private sale, find private buyers. But overall, if you are like the general public, and I think that the general public all has the main goal to sell according to their timeline and to sell for the most money possible. And really the only way you do that is to put the listing on the open market. Yeah,
I mean, I think if we learned anything during the compensation stuff the year prior, it was focus on the consumer. And then the next year we go right back into this, we're only going to put it here and we're going to do this. And to me, I think it just completely, the consumer, all the recent studies of consumers recently is they distrust the real estate market, lenders, realtors more now than ever. I mean, You can go to all the Reddit threads. You can do there's a lot of mistrust. And listen, in many cases, rightfully so. There's a lot of bad people in my industry. There's, the biggest.
There's a bad apple in every bunch.
Exactly. And I think the biggest opportunity, but I also think it creates a ton of opportunity for us.
It does.
Because now your content and all the things that you're doing are now rebuilding that trust. And it's an opportunity for a lot of people to take market share, because of that. So I'm curious if you think about that at all in your marketing, because when you're focusing on education, I always say you're also trying to motivate someone to make a move.
Of course.
On something that they're very, fearful of. And I mean, let's be honest, for years, all we would do, realtors would send, recipes and all these things. And, lenders would send magnets for the fridge, and it was nothing market related. But now it's consumers are craving, they want to understand what's going on because there's so much noise out there. So do you really, when you're doing a topic or you're talking about a social media thing, how do you kind of go through the process of putting that out there? Or do you think about it, or is it just on the fly that you do it? You
mentioned trust before, and I mentioned it too. People want to work with people they know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
I remember a friend of mine referred me to someone once, and this particular person, when I met with her, she actually said to me, I told our friend that I wanted an honest realtor. And my name came to mind.
Yeah.
People know me as being the honest agent. And I'm going to just expand upon that because I think it's so important. You have agents that try to buy listings all the time. They overinflate the price based on nothing just to try and win. And then knowing that they're going to just get it signed under contract with the brokerage, and then if I have to do a price reduction later, I will.
Well, that goes back to what you said earlier, though, about they think it's worth 3 years ago.
Yes.
So take the listing at that price and we'll figure it out later.
And that doesn't help, right? Because if there's no data to support that, buyers are looking at all of that same data.
Yeah.
And when your house is overpriced, they're looking at listings that are priced the same way. If your house doesn't measure up because it's priced too high, you're literally pushing those people toward other listings. Yeah. That doesn't help your client. So I'm very proud of the fact that I'm known for being trustworthy and honest. I don't think that you can truly really help people unless you're honest with them. You can be honest in a nice way, like, your property has some condition issues that we might need to address before we list, or whatever the case may be, pricing, condition, location issues. But if you're not honest with your clients, you're ultimately not going to be able to help them to the best of your ability. That is something I wish the public sort of understood better. Instead of receiving that news in such a negative way, try to understand that agents who are being honest with you and telling you things that you may not want to hear, they're really trying to help you in the long run. And that's something I wish more people knew.
Yeah, I always tell my team, we just had a meeting on this. We get together once a month, and one of the things we talked about, I actually had a realtor come in to talk about this, but one of the things that I always say is that people will not judge you how you handle the good. When a transaction goes, if you and I work on a transaction and it closes in 10 days, the clients are happy, they get a great rate, that's easy, okay? Because that's the expectation. It's how do you handle when appraisal comes in low, the borrower income is different than what they presented, something happens, and how you communicate that, and I think it's the same on your end, every listing doesn't go perfect, every buyer, and it's how you manage those hurdles along the way, I think separate a good realtor from a great one. So how have you learned to deal, because we talked about in the beginning being a nurse, giving bad news. How do you handle those conversations, and has that changed over the years, or?
You know what, I really think that I set that up from the beginning.
Yeah.
I set the tone of the relationship based in honesty. And I come right out front and say, real estate transactions are unpredictable. There are certain times when we need to just assume that information that we're given is correct. But there may be a chance that sometimes some of the information we get isn't right. Things do come up. Try to roll with that. We're going to try to prevent that as much as possible. but just know it's a possibility. I sort of set that up from the beginning so that they know, if the home doesn't appraise out. I very quickly tell people, I am not an appraiser. Yeah. I do my best knowing what buyers want. I do my best knowing what does the data show me in front of me. And I price accordingly. But when you're in multiple offers and you get offers that are 50, 55,000, 100,000 over asking, which doesn't happen that much anymore. It did recently happen to me, but it doesn't happen that much anymore. There's a risk it may not appraise.
When you said that, my first thought came to my head is you're prepping them before they get the offers, saying I'm not appraising everything, but the moment they get that offer, they're looking at it. They're already spending the money in their head, and they forgot everything that you've told them.
That does happen.
Yeah.
I bring everything written out so an apples to apples comparison. Yeah. We can do all the net sheets, see which deal is going to be the best for you according to what they want and their timeline. But setting it up from the beginning, I think, makes a huge difference. And, of course, these curveballs always come up. I did sell a property in Orchard Brook. It sold for $55,000 over the list price. It was the highest sale in the neighborhood. People would say to me, really? Orchard Brook? You're getting almost $1 million in Orchard Brook? That's what it is.
All it takes is the right buyer who isn't. Oh, I mean, think about it, too. Like, I see it all the time where my buyer will sell a house. And they have to find something. And it's like, they don't care about 20,000. Like, they're thinking like, we're either going to be homeless.
Right.
And we want to be in the school district. Right. We don't want to lose our offer. We're getting more on our sale. Right. So everyone always asks me, like, if people are not in the industry, why are so many people paying over list price? And there's, obviously inventory is part of it. But a lot of it is these people have sat on the sidelines for many, many years. They've put it off.
Right.
They have a great offer on their house, and they just they want to move. Like a lot of people want to move. They're just not something.
Nobody likes to pay over asking. Yeah. I recently had a client that bought a beautiful home in the city, a 3-story townhouse, gorgeous, in a very desirable area. Multiple offers. She had to go way over. She paid, I think it was $70,000 over asking. And she kept, you always hesitate. Do I really have to do that? Well, I said to her, listen, if you lose the property by a certain amount of money, how are you going to feel? Are you going to feel sad that you lost it? Then go higher if you can afford it and do that test again. If you lose it at this price, how are you going to feel? And if you're not feeling good and you can afford to go higher, then go higher. She did that until she reached her limit, and then we submitted the offer and she won. And I looked back at the sales, and the sales were, fairly 1 or 2 years ago. They were selling, and they were getting that price, and I thought that was great. Look at how much you're paying over, and how many years are you going to live in this house? 10 years, perhaps. So maybe you paid, $7,000 or $8,000 over per year. Is it worth it to you to live here for that? And the answer was yes. And I said, then do it. Yeah. Do it. If that's your answer and you feel good about those answers, you're answering your own question.
I just had a conversation with a buyer. It's funny you just mentioned that because we talked about they were going 3% over the list price. And she was having just a really hard time wrapping her head around it. And she's like, Eric, do you know, what was this, in this county, what was home prices up last year? And we looked it up. It was like 7.3%. So she's like, okay, so it's, I'm worried about paying 3% over, and it was up 7% last year. She's like, do you really think it's going to go down this year? I'm like, well, and we went through the inventory. And I think you mentioned it a couple times, but just you study the data, you analyze data. And I think that's the piece of education that's missing. What I always say is that people know how to buy a home. Like that, there's so much information. Remember when we used to put together these are the 10 steps to buy a home.
Yeah, buyer guides.
Yeah. Like
I still have them.
Yeah, like buyers and sellers know that information, or they hire us to do it. I think the real question is why. Like that's the question they have is why should I buy now and not wait? Why should I sell now, or why are rates not going to go any lower? Why the why is the piece, and it's always what I think about when I do content. Do you find that a lot of your clients are stuck on on the buyer side or the seller side? Are they stuck on what they hear in the news? Is the news like kind of a big, or is it family members, or is it all the above?
I think when you're listening to the news, what they're usually talking about is national news.
Yeah.
And national news is not really indicative of what's going on in the Midwest. Like you said, there are some places across the country that have 6 months of inventory, 9 months of inventory on the market. Here in the Midwest, we really don't have that kind of inventory that we're dealing with. We're still at a significant shortage. So those kinds of things I do try to share with my clients. People are just always nervous about having to spend more money. And, we don't have crystal balls. We guide as best we can. But ultimately, it's the buyer or the seller's decision.
Do you feel like there's a catalyst that would start moving the market a little bit? Do you think it's interest rates? Do you think it's inventory? Do you think it's all the above? Or what do you think if you were to think about 5 years from now, like what's that one thing that would really push more sales? Because my always biggest fear is that would I love rates to move lower? Absolutely. I just don't know if it makes the current situation worse because for every, I just saw this, getting ready to post a video on this, but for every quarter that rates go down, 1.42 million buyers become eligible based on average income and average sales price.
Right.
So, we don't have, we don't even have 1.42 million homes listed for sale nationally.
You're getting more buyers on the market and not enough houses.
Exactly. So do you feel like there's a catalyst that helps out there as a realtor? I mean, is it inventory? Is it,
That's a tough one. And honestly, I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking, maybe if rates go down a bit, people are getting used to the higher rates.
Yeah.
I think the 40-year average interest rate is about 7.5% to 8%, right, over 40 years. We're below that now. So are interest rates high? They're higher than they used to be.
Well, they just said that there's
No.
just as many mortgages over 5% as there are under 5% for the first time in a long time because we've started to do so many mortgages above 5%. So it's the first time that's been that way. So that kind of...
So things are moving in a different direction.
It kind of loosens up the unlock, theory of everyone locked in with their lower rates.
Right.
But I'm just like, I think the one thing that I always struggle with is, we have a lot of seniors that are aging in place, whereas, they would typically have sold and that would have been your first time home buyers buying those homes, which we're not seeing a lot of that. The other thing that really concerns me, and I'm just curious your thought on it, is obviously average first time home buyer age is 40, okay? Which, you buy at 30, was 10 years ago was 30, but one thing that always concerns me is you're losing, that 10 years that you lose, you never get that back.
No.
And it's like investing in your 401k at 50 instead of 40.
Makes a huge difference.
Like when you go to your financial advisor, they're going to be like, when you say I want to retire at 62, they're going to be like, no, you can't. The math doesn't work. The math doesn't work. So do you feel like maybe that's where we're missing the conversation is more on wealth, and building wealth and equity, and we focus too much on you got to buy a home, but we're not really telling the story enough.
That's a great point too. And I think that's probably true. I mean, if you know the answer to this, but real estate is the biggest driver of wealth in the United States, right? Yeah. So I do share that, and I always share that when I'm working with people like that young lady that called me about wanting to buy and is delaying it for a year and delaying it for another year. The biggest driver of wealth is the owning of real estate. So when you're ready to do it, jump in. Get your foot in the door and jump in because, that is how it's a big component of your overall wealth.
So here we are, 2026. We're going into the last week of February. Okay. So we've had the Super Bowl, which we always say is the unofficial start.
Yep.
Of the spring home buying season. So
I think it started 2 weeks early.
Exactly. I did. I agree with you. January was, we saw a lot of tire kickers in January and a lot of people re-engaging. But what do you see, because obviously the biggest opportunity always is the next 90 days. That's your sweet spot. And then inventory builds and then right around July, August, it starts to kind of tail off a little bit. So where do you see 2026? Do you feel confident about 2026? Obviously, rates below 6% for the first time in 3.5 years. But how are you feeling about 2026 as you sit today?
I think it's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
I really do. I think there are definitely a lot of people out there that want to buy that are hesitant because of the rates. Even though that the rates have come down, they're still hesitant. I think there's a lot of things that are scary in social media. I don't know if you saw this, but there were a lot of this like stream of social media posts where you had a lot of women that were saying the worst thing that they ever did was buy a home.
Yes.
Because they were inundated with repairs and expenses, and they were just crying all the time over the fact that what did they do? They regretted the decision to buy.
Yeah.
I think we really need to educate people about it's not just getting that down payment. It's not just about what is the monthly fee, but it's about ongoing care and maintenance to maintain that home so you maintain that equity and that value.
On that point, though, do you feel like that was that time where people were just buying because interest rates were low? And it was like...
I don't think so.
No? You think it was
so.
more...
I think it was after that.
After that. Okay, that's interesting. Okay.
I've seen... it was one of the saddest deals I ever worked on, but I had a client that thought the value of their home was X.
Yeah.
And they were paying property taxes on that X value for years and years. But because of deferred maintenance, they lost about $300,000 in value on deferred maintenance. They were paying property taxes on that inflated price for years and years. It broke my heart. They didn't get nearly what they thought they would. They made decisions to do other things and not take care of some of the maintenance issues, but maintenance is so important to maintaining the value of your home. Do it ongoing. Yeah. Regular maintenance is huge so that when you're ready to sell, you don't have to face that.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I'm super passionate about. I talk about this a lot. I mean, I'm actually doing a first-time home buyer campaign this year because it's something I'm so passionate about. The average net worth of an owner versus a renter, I think is really important.
Yeah,
and
43 times higher.
Yeah, I mean, it's so I think, when you look at 5, 10, 15 years down, obviously we don't want people having the experiences that they had. And obviously there's a ton of education we can do and things we can do better to make sure that doesn't happen. But I also feel like we've somewhat failed as an industry in a lot of ways because we haven't done a better job. I don't know if you remember, but there was a period of time where Realtor.com would do all these advertisements. This was years ago. And it was all about the economics of buying a home. And we don't really have anything in our industry and your industry that's kind of telling our story as an industry. We're all competing in our own little way, but I think we've done a really bad job of trying to educate the consumer on the long-term value of buying a home and what that means and what the impact is if you don't do it. Now, and let's be honest, not everyone needs to be a homeowner.
No, that's true.
And not everyone is going to have the same experience. But my biggest concern for people is I work with a lot of financial advisors, and you talk to them, and they're concerned because people aren't saving the amount of money, and they all want to retire younger.
Right.
And the problem is we're living so much longer. Used to be you retire at 55, 60. You may live another 30 years. And do you have enough money to live the same lifestyle that you're living now? So for me, what I am curious if you have any thoughts on it is there any way that we can, or have you thought about a way to better educate them and not just you're going to make this over the next 5 years, but where do you want to be 10, 15 years? Have we done a bad job of really talking about long-term?
I think that there's a component of that in our role.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the primary component of our role. I think it's part of it.
Yeah.
But maybe we do a better job of getting them that financial education that they need, referring them to estate planners, financial advisors, people like that. I'm not sure if that is my role.
Yeah, yeah.
I think I can allude to that a little bit in conversations. But in a more general sense.
I guess where I was going is kind of we talk about, for so long it was a great price, during, after the prices are down 20, after when you first got in the business, it was all about price because prices were so much depressed and you're getting a great deal. Then it was about interest rates. Where now it's really neither. It's about the economics of buying a house,
Right.
building wealth.
I think you're right about that. Yeah.
And I think, maybe we can learn from that a little bit and learn that because there's obviously, when the average age is 40, there's obviously something there that's preventing people from, and we can say it's inventory, but I mean, naturally, there's a lot of inventory, in Texas and Florida, but they're still not buying, they're choosing to rent. And there has to be something that's getting, it just always
Maybe
something,
it's lifestyle.
I know,
Maybe it's lifestyle. Maybe not everyone wants to be a homeowner. I mean, those videos I think it was on Instagram that I was talking about, or it might have been YouTube, I don't remember. But maybe those people don't necessarily want that life, that they're doing it because they've been told that you should be a homeowner. And maybe some part of them wants to be a homeowner, but maybe that's not the life that they're ready for yet. I'm not really sure. Maybe we need the Schoolhouse Rock of real estate, right?
I mean, I think that's it. I think it's interesting because I feel like, there has to be something that kind of gets people over the hump. So I guess the other thing I wanted to mention is, one of the things we always talk about when we do this podcast is, real estate, is it's not a 9 to 5,
not
job.
at all.
So a lot of weekends, a lot of evenings, and there's a lot of support from family to kind of be able to do what we do.
Sure.
It's funny, whenever I interview someone to be a loan officer, I always ask them, like, what's your home life like? And they always look at me kind of weird, but it's, you can't, when you say, hey, I got to go show a home at 7:30 at night, if you don't have, support doing that, it's hard to be able to do that. Yeah,
you're funny. My kids were older when I went into the business, so it wasn't like I didn't have to find childcare. I have a very supportive husband, and I have 2 sons, and they're very supportive too. So they help me put out signs. They sit open houses with me, and so it's been a family affair for sure. But you're right; it is a challenging kind of career for people, and it is not the right career for a lot of people. If you want your weekends off and you don't want to be disturbed after 6:00 p.m., then choose a different career.
Yeah, I mean, because I think, like I always say too, like when you take a call at 7:00 or you got to go do something, you can't have that feeling in the back of your mind, like, oh, well, they're going to be upset if I do this or whatever. Like, when I had my wife on, that was kind of like what we spoke about is, she's heard every conversation. We actually quizzed her if she could answer like some of the questions because she's heard me go through the same thing.
My husband can do that too.
Yeah, see?
Yes.
That'd be a great video for you guys. It's like have them do something that you do all the time.
That.
See,
I'm going to do that.
That's what we did. We went through it. I was like, so what's the difference between a pre-approval and a pre-qualification? Like all this stuff, because like it's what I do all day long. But it's like our spouses, they have to put up with a lot. And the word I use a lot is sacrifice. There's a lot of sacrifice on our side, but there's also sacrifice on our family side but it also creates there's a lot of great pieces of it. But I think sometimes people get in this business because it's like, oh, well, I'm going to be able to make my own schedule. How many times?
You hear people say that.
I know.
But what your schedule is 18-hour days. Yeah. It's not, necessarily the 6-hour day you were hoping for. So.
And I'm always more busy when people are not in work, like evenings and weekends. And I think that's really important. So I love that. And then the other thing that I always like to talk about is, you have the business today and you have all this landscape. Where do you see the industry? Do you have any thoughts on the industry? Obviously there's been a ton of changes in the industry, a lot of in the news for the first time in a long time. You work for a boutique, as we say, which I think is great. But like, where do you see the industry in 5 years? Do you see any big changes?
With the new change in the rules regarding buyer representation, we thought there were going to be big changes with realtor compensation. Yeah. And what ended up happening is that real estate agents actually ended up making more money than less. So you always have these unforeseen circumstances based on changes that get made in the industry. AI is making a huge splash in real estate. Yeah. And I'm actively training in AI every day, trying to improve my process, improve better communication. Yeah. sources for my clients. So I think that is impacting a lot of things. I do think that the markets are becoming more compressed. I think, we've always had that rule where 10% of the agents do 90% of the work.
Yeah.
And I think that is even going to become even more compressed.
I agree.
Because now agents can work more with AI automations and things that they can do that help them work faster.
Do you feel like your clients are using AI more? Have you dealt with that at all, or?
Not as much.
Okay.
There probably are, but it's not necessarily something that we talk about. I know that there was a huge prediction that everybody was going to start buying houses and selling houses on their own, and there's no longer a need for a real estate agent. But, that has come and gone, time and time again, and people still are using real estate agents. There is something about the intimacy of a real estate transaction. People want to know and have someone in their corner that is helping them. Even if they think that agent isn't doing a lot, that reassurance behind their back just makes them feel good.
Well, think about it this way. Have you ever called somewhere and you got a bot or you got anything and you want to chuck the phone out the window when you're talking to them?
Course,
so people, there's been a lot of studies on this. People will leverage AI, okay? But people are craving human interaction right now more than they have in many, many years because so much has been removed from human interaction, and it's hard to get to a human-to-human conversation.
It is.
And what I always say, what's very unique in real estate is, and you probably, maybe you think about this, but is real estate is one of the very few professions left that you sit face-to-face across the kitchen table from a client, and that's still the process today.
It is.
I mean, because you name any other industries nowadays, and that is not the case.
I did a Zoom presentation recently with a potential client. It was the first Zoom presentation I had done for a listing. And although I loved the process, I could pull all my electronic sources of things that I wanted to show them very easily. It was very easy to go through listings. It was not the same. It was not the same. I still prefer that person-to-person interview. Even though Zoom is so much more convenient and it saves you money, right? It saves you time, it saves you money. You're not driving back and forth. But it is not the same as sitting next to someone and having them sit next to you and having them ask you questions and looking in your eye the same way. It's not the same.
I think there's something to be said, too. They're in their home, where they're comfortable. You're going in there.
Right.
Like, that takes a special... I don't think people understand, that takes a very special skill to be able to go in someone's home and talk about their most important asset, good news, bad news, whatever. Present yourself, get a listing agreement signed. I think we take it for granted how much of a skill that actually is. And I think, there's not too many industries. I think it's easier, nowadays for my industry, I would meet with every client. They don't want to meet with me. They just want to fill out their stuff online and
your online application.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I always ask everyone, do you want to meet in person? You want to do it over the phone, or you want to do it online? Oh, I can do it online. It's no matter what, it's 99% want to do it online. But I feel like there's an advantage of face-to-face consultations because I think that's when the relationship is built. And that relationship can translate. So I just think it's one of the few industries where it's still possible.
Do you find, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you find that once somebody begins a relationship with you, so they filled out their application and they've committed to working with you, do you find then they are more desirous of having a person-to-person?
So I have a very detailed process. So I will not do the application until I have either a Zoom or a phone call. I prefer a Zoom first, okay? I would say about 50% of the time it's Zoom. The other 50% we do a phone call, and I call it like a discovery call. And I don't want to go directly to the application. I always want to do the discovery call, and I want to go through kind of the process, what makes us different, ask them their fears, because I feel like our conversion rate is significantly higher when we have that an upfront call.
That's a good point.
It's not even comparable, okay? I've heard of listing agents that do a Zoom before they go to the house, like a pre-listing, kind of the same idea.
Sure.
You get as much information from them, you take down all that information, then you get the application. So then we get the application, we get all their documentation. Then I do a buyer consultation call afterwards. So between the discovery call, the application, and then the buyer, consultation call, we have so much information and get so much that's where we develop that value. It's the only way we can kind of create that stickiness, as we say. Like if you just send out an application and you send out a generic pre-approval, there's no value there. Like,
you're probably able to see inconsistencies too and say, hey, this is a red flag, or, and you get that from having more than one conversation.
Absolutely. And I find too that they won't do the discovery call. It's a red flag. Like, who wouldn't want to do a discovery call? And you can get a lot out of that I can give back to the realtor and be like, hey, just so you know, like, they don't want to do this. They just want to do, that could be meaning that they just went into your open house. Yeah. They want to fill out an app and make an offer, and then that offer doesn't work out and they're off, doing it again. Right. So like you learn a lot in that discovery call. And then you also, what I find is that there's a lot of why people don't want to do the application that are just, fears that don't really make sense. And the moment you address those up front, the rest of the process is easier. And then that buyer consultation call, I feel like we can give a lot of information back. So what I started doing recently is when we do the Zoom, with AI, you can take that whole transcript and you can load it into your CRM and get all the bullet points, and you can share that in an email with the realtor and be like, hey, this is where they want to be monthly payment wise. This is what they want. And now you're just building that information. Yeah. And the whole idea is, instead of showing someone 10 homes, 15 homes, maybe you show them 5 because we've spent more time up front. I think that is the opportunity that we have. No different than, you working with the buyer, going through a buyer consultation listing. The more information you have, the more information you can provide to them, and the better you can help them.
Right.
You can easily go slap a sign in the front of the house, sign the documents, but like, you're not getting the information that's going to ultimately help them the most.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. Well, so one of the ways we always end, we have a little fun. So,
oh no.
It's easy. It's easy. So if you were not in real estate and money was like, you were, financially set, where do you think, you would be, and what would you be doing day to day?
I have a good answer for that.
Okay.
So my dream job when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a dancer.
Okay.
I felt, oh, wow, I could be a dancer, and that would be so much fun, right? But I love what I do.
Yeah.
I wake up every morning going, who am I going to meet today?
Yeah.
What are we going to talk about today? I am so excited every day. My husband, Sunday night, he's like, work on Monday. But I'm like, what am I going to do tomorrow? I love it.
Isn't that a great feeling though? Like,
I
don't think people realize the freedom. It's funny you brought this up, because I just had this conversation with my son, because I went back and we drove by my first job. It was up on Ogden, and I was telling him
what was it?
I worked at a bank.
Oh, okay.
And I just remember I hated I loved it for a while, but I just there wasn't a passion. It was I would count down the hours, wanting to get out of there,
Sure.
And I just remember that freedom when you were doing something that you really loved,
right? And
you would come in somebody asked me one day, you brought up Sunday, so someone asked me what my favorite day of the week was, and I was like, I love Monday, and they're like, how do you love Monday? And I was explaining I love that feeling of a fresh week and getting in, and I just love what I do.
Yeah,
that's a great freedom.
It is great.
Yeah.
It is great, and I tell my children that as they're exploring different career opportunities.
Yeah.
Try to do what you love. I mean, I've also heard people say do what you're good at. Hopefully those are the same things.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to answer your question, if I wasn't doing what I would do now, and I had all the money I needed and I was totally secure, I would be a perpetual student.
Oh, there you go. I
loved being in college. Yeah. I loved taking classes.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to Northern Illinois for my undergrad, and I went to Rush for my master's.
Awesome.
But one of my favorite classes was art history. I just adored that class, learning about all the classical paintings and the techniques and why did they paint this or that. I'd be a perpetual student.
That's awesome. Did
I'd
you
love
grow
it.
up in the area when you were younger, or where?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
I pretty much have grown up in Downers Grove my entire life.
Wow.
Other than 2 times. So I lived in LaGrange for a year,
Okay.
and then after I got married, my husband and I both worked downtown, so we lived downtown for 3 years, and then
Okay.
we came back and bought our first house
Yeah,
here.
that's
So
great.
pretty much I've lived here my whole life.
So your parents had a house here? Or, yeah, that's
Yes,
great. Yeah.
yes.
Do you have siblings? And
I do. So I'm the youngest of 6 children.
wow, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
so we had a big family, which I loved. I loved growing up in a big family.
Yeah. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
do you have? Is everybody local, or is everyone kind of spread out now? Or?
No, they're more spread out.
Okay, okay.
I have a couple siblings that still live around here, but it's all good.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
all
that's good. Yeah. So that's great. Like, I just want to thank you for coming in. As I told you
My
before,
pleasure. This is fun.
like I love your social
Let's do it
media.
again.
We will. I think I told you, but like I love your social media.
Thank
I
you.
love everything you've built. The one thing you've mentioned education a lot, and I have to say, you come to every single event.
I try,
You,
and
you
you're
do.
having a new
We're
one. I
doing
think I
tomorrow.
signed up.
Yeah. But you always come to events, and you're always getting education, and you're always participating. And listen, most realtors or anybody, they make excuses of why they can't do things. But I think it's, evident in the way you have built a business that you have to absorb as much as you can.
it's changing every day.
Oh my God.
Every
like,
day.
Especially with YouTube. Like speaking of YouTube, like I'm watching videos nonstop of, different AI stuff and like all these things. It's
Do you
like
have the paid program?
yes, I do. Like I'm like honestly, like I watch YouTube more than I watch TV nowadays.
I love YouTube.
Yeah,
I
it's
do
it's
too.
crazy. So I
Ooh,
just
Speaking of YouTube, did you see my new video?
I have not, but I will. Maybe we can reference it in here.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll put it in the link. Is this
Okay.
which one was this?
It's the one that I did about Downers Grove and the Ice Festival.
I did see that one.
Yeah,
I
I thought
did
that
see
was
that
fun.
one. Okay,
Yeah.
so that was a couple weeks back for the Ice Festival. That was a really good video.
It's an evergreen video for Downers Grove.
No, I love it because it gives a great local feel for
Right.
what. And the Ice Festival is it's such a unique festival, anyways.
I passed out ice scrapers.
I did see that. I did. Yes, I did. So we'll link that in the description. But
Okay.
great video. I think the lesson from that video though is that I think we always need to talk about real estate, and those local, hyper local videos do really, really well.
I agree.
Because it helps sell. Like if you're in the city and you're thinking about moving to Downers Grove, those are
Or
the
in
videos.
California, you have to come here, right?
Yeah. But I just want to thank you for obviously all the support. As I always say, there are people that, are super nice to your team and respectful, and you've always been one of those.
Thank you.
Whenever we worked together. So I just want to thank you for that. And that's not the case all the time, so we appreciate all the support.
I appreciate you picking up the phone. When I call, you always answer, so I love that.
My wife will tell you I answer the phone all the time. So I very rarely will miss a call. And if it doesn't go to me, it goes to Tom, which Tom's the lucky one that gets to answer all my missed calls.
He's good too. So.
Yes. Thank you. Well, one thing that we didn't touch on, which I want to make sure we touch on, is you've made a big transition recently with adding a team member.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
yes.
do you want to talk a little bit about how that transition?
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't had a team before.
Yeah.
So her name is Faith Rosensheen Young.
Yeah.
She's a brand new agent, but she's not brand new to life. So she's my age, but she has a wealth of work experience, and her history as being a technical writer.
Yeah.
So, boy, talk about detail-oriented. Faith is detail-oriented, but she's a fabulous buyer's agent. She really gets in there, researches, great educator. And we recently did a program at the York Township Senior Center.
Oh, that's great.
Where we were educating you. You hear everybody say, "Oh, what should you do when you sell your home?"
Yeah.
You've got to declutter. But why? What are the benefits of doing that now versus waiting until you sell? So we did that presentation there. It was very successful and well attended. A lot of fun.
And that's important because most of these people have lived in their house for 30 years. And if they want to list their house next week, decluttering doesn't take a few days. It takes.
I'll tell you some of the comments later in private.
Does that but it causes probably a lot of anxiety for people when they start thinking about.
It does.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they know that it's an overwhelming task, and they always estimate by a significant amount of time how long it's going to take. I've had people say I can do it in two weeks, and a year later they're still doing it. So that is challenging. But we did that. We saw that need, and so we did that presentation for them, and we're going to keep doing different presentations.
Yeah, because one of the things we talked about was seniors, aging in place and not selling. What we see, which is very sad, is that they put it off, but then there's a life event that happens with one of the spouses.
Right.
And now they're forced to sell. And now one spouse is taking care of, a lot of the things.
Right. That was the whole point.
Yeah.
Don't wait until something significant or terrible happens. Start living that life now. When we get done staging and prepping our properties, most of the people tell us, why haven't I lived like this the whole time?
Yeah.
They absolutely love the way it looks. They love the result, and they love that clean, uncluttered look.
Yeah.
Still feels warm and inviting, but without all the distractions. And you can feel people just take a deep breath when they go in the room. And we're trying to get that across to people, that you start living that way now.
Yeah.
And then if something happens, God forbid it happens, you'll be that much better suited to deal with it.
No, that's great. I love that. That's a great way to end it. Again, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For
I had
everything. We'll do it again.
I hope so.
You were the first realtor in our new backdrop,
Yay!
so that's exciting. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.